They say the love of money is the root of all evil. The face of evil was a seasoned fireman named James Jacobie. The mark was a young accountant named Akwaso Francois, who entered what should have been a mundane business transaction. Instead, in this episode of Untold Stories, you will hear first-hand accounts of a couple falling in love, entering an ill-fated business transaction, which inevitably ends in murder. For the first time ever, the lone survivor, Eva Louis, tells the mind-boggling, harrowing, and judicially stagnant story of love, fraud, and murder.
Akwaso and I met through us working for the same company. I remember because of company policy, we were not allowed to date. And one day he passed by my cubicle and he dropped off a note on my desk. He just dropped it off and he walked away. At the time, MSN Messenger was popular, right? And I opened the note and I noticed it was his email address. So I tucked it away and I didn't bother with it for like 2 weeks because the thing about Akwaso was he was getting a lot of female attention, and I noticed that, and I try my best to keep away from guys like that. How do you stand out in a crowd when you're just like everybody else? That was my train of thought at the time. And 2 weeks after he gave me the note, he came in my cubicle and he asked me, "What have I done? Why do you hate me?" And I told him, "I don't hate you." And then he said to me, "So why didn't you add me?" So I laughed and I went home that night. I added him, of course. There was this feature where you could sign into MSN Messenger and then appear offline. So I used to do that because I didn't want to talk to him. You know, he already had enough girls.
Take me back to that first kiss.
Oh my goodness. We were not allowed to date. So if we had to go out, it had to be a whole secret venture. And he asked me out. He said to me, I'd like to take you out, but it would have to be at my house. I'm sorry, but you know the rules. And I would not want to get either of us in trouble. I thought about it and then I finally agreed. So I went to his house for a movie night. His exact words were, "I promise I will not touch you." We were just doing a movie. So of course, I mean, emotions had already been built up because of all the chats. Over MSN Messengers. So we were watching a movie and then our hands accidentally touched each other's and then the electricity and all of that. And then, you know, one thing led to another and bam. It was amazing because I was extremely attracted to him. So
that was old school, yeah. Long before Netflix and chill.
Precisely.
Old school.
Precisely.
Watching the movie on a DVD.
Yeah, man.
What are some of the fun things that you all did together?
Oh my gosh, so many. I mean, as frustrating as it was that we couldn't date exclusively, we would do stuff like our hotel weekend escapes. That was the most exciting thing. Going to hotels that we know a lot of locals don't frequent. Even the managers at some of those hotels, one in particular, they knew us by name. They would even give us the honeymoon suites sometimes because we were there so often, you know, and we were like the only locals who would come that often as well. So that was the most exciting thing, knowing that we could get away with those little secret ventures.
When did you know that he was the one?
3 months after we started dating. It was Valentine's Day, and I had gone to his house, and we were having a conversation. We usually sit at the edge of his bed to speak about our day, and he said to me,
You know, what do we do? I mean, I'm 30 years old now. I don't have the energy or the time to be running around. I mean, I'm a family-oriented person. I really would like to settle down. What do we do? Are you ready for this?
yes,
Yeah? So let's do this.
yeah.
Yeah? Come on, we're doing it.
Describe him.
Gosh, I mean, Kwaso had his flaws like everybody else. I'm not going to act like we didn't argue or he does not have he didn't have his issues as well. But Kwaso was the most amazing man I have ever met in my entire life. You know, he was very kind-hearted, very patient, very understanding, he was effortlessly charming, he was easygoing, he was understanding, he was supportive.
Take me back to the moment when you revealed that you were pregnant.
Oh gosh. He was happy. He was, because we had already been together for a while. We were living together and everything. And I remember us always discussing having a child. And one day we decided, these things, can you really plan them? Are you ever really ready? Is there really a right time to have a child? So I remember him saying, if you get pregnant, then what the hell?
Tell me his relationship with Mr. Jacobie.
Cordial, you know, business partners.
How did they become friends?
Akwaso and Jacobie became, I wouldn't say friends, but they got to know each other through Kwaso purchasing a minibus from him. Akwaso had been working as an accountant at GL Food Market, and unfortunately, GL Food Market was bought over. They changed ownership, you know, from Peter and Company to Massey, and some cuts had to be made. And unfortunately, Akwaso was let go. So while he was job searching, before he got that job at St. Jude's Hospital, he came up with the idea that he wanted to put a minibus on the road. So we proceeded to go on this page, 758 Investment Group on Facebook, in search of a minibus. And that's where we came across a bus being sold, a Toyota Hiace being sold by James Jacobie. And Kwaso proceeded to contact him so we could go view the bus.
Hello. Yeah, that's Jacobie. Yeah, I have a bus there on sale, yeah.
What was the arrangement between Jacobie and Akwaso to buy that bus?
When the amount was decided on, we knew that the change of ownership was not going to go through as quickly as we wanted, because Akwaso wanted the bus right away, and Jacobie was willing to give it right away as well. So we figured we would pay him for the bus, and we typed up a sales agreement. You know, we printed out 2 copies. The bus came, Jacobie drove the bus up to Akwaso's residence in Entripo, and they both, he gave Jacobie the sales agreement to read, and he agreed on all the terms and conditions, and both of them signed both copies, and both parties kept a copy. You know, just in case something goes wrong, we could say that yes, the bus belongs to Akwaso.
What happened with the bus and that accident and the insurance?
Unfortunately, about 2 months after we purchased the bus, it was involved in an accident. A small SUV had ran into the bus. It was a write-off, so we were due for well, compensation, insurance money, whatever you want to call it. But unfortunately, the insurance on the bus was still in Jacobie's name. And so the insurance company told us that they cannot make the check out to Akwaso. So they had to make the check out to James Jacobie, and then he in turn had to hand the check over to us when he received it. That did not happen.
Apart from the day of purchase, had you ever seen Akwaso and Jacobie interact, and what was that like?
Apart from the day of purchase, yes, on the Jacobie was at the scene of the accident as well, and their conversations were friendly.
Yeah, Akwaso.
Oh, Akwaso. What are you doing?
I was just speaking to the wrecking crew, and they were telling me, the bus is completely wrecked.
Huh?
Yeah, they got a write-off, yeah. Yeah, so I don't have the time or the patience to be, looking to sell parts on that vehicle. So I figure I would just give it to you. But anyway, I spoke to insurance people. Yeah, they tell me, like, the bus still on your name.
Yeah, it's on my name for sure. Yeah. I can do that for you then. I think I can do that for you.
Yeah, just give me a call. Yeah. And we've been working well. Yeah, we have a good relationship. So I figured I'll just give you like $1,000. Yeah, whenever you get the check, just give me a call.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. We can do that.
Yeah, we'll talk, man. Yeah, we'll be in touch.
He found that James Jacobie was trustworthy because he was a fireman. So we were not worried, and we were not struggling financially. So, and on top of that, Kwaso had gotten re-employed. So we were okay, and we just, like I said, we just thought when months passed by and we didn't hear anything of the check, we just thought that insurance companies usually take long, so we were relaxed. There was a time James Jacobie had asked for in the insurance documents, and Akwaso was at work at the time, and he told me, just take a picture of the documents to be on the safe side and drop off the documents for him in town. And I dropped it off for him. I asked him how he was doing. He said he was doing great. With never any friction.
Describe that November 15th day. What was it like? What was the day like for you?
That day, I remember being a little sick from the pregnancy, throwing up, going to the restroom too many times. And it was an extremely hot day. I remember also at the time, BBM was raining, and my status on BBM was, it's too hot to be alive. Up to this day, I find that so weird.
How did that day turn? Take me back step by step.
Wow. Akwaso, I had spent the day in Mikud at his sister's house.
Babe, come on, let's go.
He
Grab your
didn't
stuff.
even enter the house. He just said hi to his
come on,
sister,
let's
asked her
go.
how she was doing, and he told me, babe, go get your stuff because we have to meet Jacobie. He sent me a text, and he showed me the text of Jacobie telling him, come and check him after work. We thought maybe, it could be the check he wants to hand over to us, or it could be the written off bus he wants to discuss, because we had given him the bus. Kwaso had told him, sell the parts if you want, do what he wants, because Kwaso was content with his new job and his new salary, so he couldn't be bothered with selling parts. So we thought it was something, to that respect. So we drove up to Castries. We drove that night, surprisingly, Kwaso drove very slowly, which is not a usual thing.
It's not a usual thing.
Exactly.
Akwaso
Precisely, Dale. So Akwaso drove unusually slow, and he was asking me along the way, he was continually asking me how I'm doing, because I really seemed sick and out of it and stuff like that. So when we got to Bexar, he called Jacobie for proper directions, and then we met Jacobie just after the ordeal. And yeah, he parked the car under a lamp post, and then he proceeded to the back of the car. When we got there, when we pulled up, Jacobie was in conversation with another man. You know, I hadn't seen that man's face. Up to this day, I have no idea what he looks like because of the way he was dressed, and he had this hat all the way down his forehead, close to his eyes. And I wasn't even paying attention to that because I didn't know what was coming after. So Akwaso got out of the car. He went to the back. The windows were down. If they were quarreling, I would have heard because Akwaso was literally resting on the car. And they had a short conversation about, 2 minutes, 5 minutes tops. And Akwaso came back to the car, the front seat, the driver's seat, and he took his stuff out the back seat. He rested it on my thighs and he told me, "Could you hold this for me? These guys want a ride to Mark." And while he was telling me this, I noticed that Jacobie and his male companion went into a small dirt road on the left-hand side of the road. They stayed there for like a minute or two, and then they came back. Jacobie sat behind me, and the other guy sat behind Akwaso, and we drove off to Mark.
How do I tell her that I'm going away when I know that she'll be begging me to stay? And how do I tell her that the time has come to part when she's gonna take it so hard? I don't wanna break her heart. I don't wanna see her cry, no. 'Cause I promised her forever that I'd be by her side. So how do I tell her goodbye?
We're here for beginnings, endings, and everything in between. For the startups, the slow starts, for the early risers, and the end of day finishers. For the career jugglers, high flyers, and for everyone who's ever had a goal or chased a goal. It's why we're here. Here to help you plan, track, and execute your goals so you can own a better tomorrow. Labrie Cooperative Credit Union. One member and one goal at a time. Call us today. Telephone 459-6900. Labrie Cooperative Credit Union. We are not a bank. We are better.
After we drove some distance into Mark, we came to a halt because there was a very rough-looking dirt road, and Akwaso had just lowered his car. So he told Jacobie, this is the furthest I will go because I do not want the under my car to touch. You know, I don't want any parts getting damaged, etc. So at that point, there were people around, lights all about the place, people barbecuing, etc. because it was a Friday night. So usual stuff. So At that point, Jacobie pulled out his phone and he made a phone call, which I later found out that it was a fake phone call. He said to whoever over the line that, yeah, Gasa, okay, all right, and then he hung up. And then he told Akwaso, well, the person he came to check in Mark is not there anymore. They asked him to meet them on the Millennium Highway. So he asked Kwaso to drop him off there. Kwaso was like, okay, no problem, that's cool. So we turned around and we proceeded out of Mark. On our way out, there was some concrete, very dark road surrounded by bushes and stuff, very, very dark. And Jacobie pointed out that track to Kwaso and told Akwaso, yo, if you want, you can pass there. You know, that's a shortcut to cul-de-sac. And Kwaso was like, nah, man, I safe. I'll stick to the main road. But then he insisted. And Kwaso was like, nah, I good. I'll stick to the main road. Not even then we thought anything of it. Because like I said, no friction, no quarrels, no bad business. We didn't owe him any monies, contrary to popular belief. So we drove out and proceeded to the Millennium Highway. After we got to, there is this area on the highway where if you're headed to Castries on the right-hand side, it's a residential area, and the other side, people do a lot of sand mining there, and there was an old dump there, I was told. And they dropped off there. They said they were stopping, basically, and Kwaso pulled up. It was like around 7:30. Vehicles all about the place. We could see people's lights and everything in their houses. And when the car stopped, we expected them to get out, but they didn't. And this is where the crazy started. At that point, Jacobie advanced between myself and Akwaso. He put his left hand over my mouth and he put his right hand over Akwaso's mouth. And I heard him say, now you see the two of you all there? So I'm looking at Kwaso all confused, like what the hell is going on? Because what did we do to warrant that? Like, what's going on? And I saw Akwaso fighting to remove his seatbelt, and all of a sudden the guy behind him had him in a headlock. And that's when I knew that something was really, really wrong. So all of a sudden I took this very strange taste in my mouth and I looked down just to see my shirt and my pants soaked in blood, and I'm like, where is this coming from? And I felt a blow to the back of my head. And I was like, girl, you need to get out and get help, because I knew I couldn't fight them off, you know? And I was panicking as well, obviously. So I quickly took off my seatbelt and on all floors, I ran up the old dump and I was screaming for help for Akwaso. I turned back. When I was running, I remember turning back and seeing all three men out the car. Akwaso looked out of it. That was the last time I saw Akwaso. He looked really out of it because both the men, they were on either sides, holding both his arms and leading him to the beach area. And I remember seeing his head dangling like somebody who was drunk, like a really drunk person. And he was just going left and right, back and forth. And I was like, shit. Because I knew that he had received injuries in the car, but I was like, at least I saw his legs moving. So I thought, okay, he's still alive. And then people started coming. A lady came first, and then when Jacobie and his friend or partner noticed that people were coming, they dropped Kwaso in some ditch, and they went into Akwaso's car and they sped away in the direction of Bexon. I was laying in the gutter and everything like that, and then I told the lady that I think that my boyfriend is seriously hurt, because I know that the first thing he would do if he was conscious is to check to see if I was okay. But I didn't want to see myself. I never saw Akwaso after the point where they were taking him to the beach. I didn't want to, because I knew something was terribly wrong, but I didn't want to see him in that state because I just knew that it wasn't good at all. You know, so she sent her son to check on Akwaso. She said, I asked them if he was still alive. She told me yes, we cleaned his face, we took a shirt, we cleaned up his face, he's still breathing. So I was like, good. So after 20 minutes, the ambulance finally came, and I told the gentleman, could you please go with my boyfriend first, because he is worse than I am right now. So send somebody else to come get me. And so like they went with Akwaso, and 10 minutes afterwards, another ambulance came and brought me to the Victoria Hospital.
Describe the guys in the car.
Physically, James Jacobie is a very tall, slender guy. He has bulging eyes, usually has a flat haircut, around your complexion, about that. The other guy, he was petite, very short. He had dreads at the time. I was told that he cut it off, but yeah, he had dreads at the time, and very dark skin. That's all I can remember about him, but I don't know his facial features. I cannot remember, because like I said, I never took a good look at him. He never spoke that night. He never ever spoke to me. He never spoke in the car.
After you're taken to the hospital for treatment, what happened next, and what were your injuries?
When they rolled me in on the wheelchair, I saw, so they were tending to Kwaso, and I saw through the cracks that there was a lot of blood, those cottons, huge balls of cotton blood. And I just turned away because I just didn't want to see, like I said, you know. So they rolled past. I told them to just go, please take me somewhere else. And I sat there for hours before I was attended to. You know how it is at the Victoria Hospital. And eventually they attended to me, and apparently I was not even aware that I had some injuries with my hands, my fingers. I had a dislocated finger, another one was fractured. I had 5 blows to the head, lacerations. I had a fractured skull. Right here, if you look closely, you will see the scar and a little dent. So that was the worst injury I had. According to my mother, there was a hole in my head, and that's where I have the fractured skull. No, so they proceeded to shave off the hair and, stitch me up.
When did you find out that your boyfriend was dead?
I found out Akwaso was dead around, say, 2 a.m. They didn't want to tell me. I think he died around 10:30 p.m. And they did not want to tell me because I was pregnant at the time, firstly. I was 2 months pregnant, and also they wanted to be able to stitch me up. And trust me, if they had told me before I was stitched up, there's no way anybody would have been able to hold me down or anything like that. So they did the right thing, the professional thing, and they did what they had to do with me, and they told me. I remember my mother coming to me with this look on her face, and I'm like, "Mommy, what is wrong with you? Why are you looking at me like that?" Because in my head, Akwaso was in the men's ward recovering. And then everybody had left the hospital, all Kwaso's friends, his mother had left, and I realized that his sister was there. And then the doctor came to me and he told me, "Let's go to the back room." And the sister came with me. And I thought that they would tell me that you're going to have a vegetable for a boyfriend, but you're going to have a boyfriend. He's going to be missing some parts of his brain, but he will still be alive. I was expecting to hear some bad news. I'm not going to lie. Because his mother had come to me before I was stitched up and she told me, "Eva, it does not look good." And they took me to the back room and the sister started rubbing my back. I'm like, "Yo, don't touch me." I didn't want anybody to even insinuate that Kwaso was not okay. So they took me to the back room and they said, "Well, we tried everything." And when I heard the but, I was like, nah. Like, this cannot be happening. And when they finally said it, I started screaming, of course. And I looked at the sister because his sister is a doctor. And I told Michelle, "Do something. Like, you're a doctor, do something." Because I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe it.
Did the police visit you at the hospital?
Yes, they did. The next day, the day after the incident, they visited me very early in the morning.
Did you identify the killer?
I did. The very same night of the incident, before I was picked up by the ambulance, the same officer who took the statement from me, he was at the scene of the incident, and I remember him asking me, "My girl, who did that to y'all?" And I said, "James Jacobie." And he literally kicked a stone on the side of the road and he was like, "Shit, mate, again." And I was like, "What? What's that supposed to mean?"
It's been a long day without you, my friend. And I'll tell you all about it when I see you again.
How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I went through, you were standing there by my side. And now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
Let the light guide your way. Yeah. Hold every memory as you go. And every road you take will always lead you home. Oh, it's been a long day without you, my friend. And I'll tell you all about it when I see you again.
For the first time ever in St. Lucia, the Monopole Cooperative Credit Union offers loans to purchase the vehicle of your dreams, regardless of the age. We also provide full comprehensive insurance coverage for vehicles up to 15 years. Our interest rates start at 6.5% with only 10% deposit required. So feel free, dream, test drive, select. We're here to provide the finance and insurance to get you on the road regardless of the age. Monopole Cooperative Credit Union. Our people, our community, our credit union. Telephone 455-3370.
It's been a long day without you, my friend. And I'll tell you all about it when I see you again.
How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I went through, you were standing there by my side. And now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
Let the light guide your way. Yeah. Hold every memory as you go. And every road you take will always lead you home. Oh, it's been a long day without you, my friend. And I'll tell you all about it when I see you again.
I had to be escorted to V4 to participate in an ID parade, an effort to identify James Jacobie and the other man who was involved that night.
Tell me about that ID parade.
Well, I got there and the rules were laid out to me, the rules of the ID parade, and they introduced me to Jacobie's lawyer, and I was taken to the room. There were two separate ID parades, of course, one for each person. And I walked into the room and there was this huge glass window with, can't remember exactly how many men standing behind it. But I knew off the bat that James Jacobie, I saw him standing at position number 3. But they told me that I had to walk up and down the lineup twice. And I was when I saw him, I was scared, I was nervous, I was angry, I hated him. But yeah, I did what I had to do and I pointed at number 3. And I was taken out of the room and then I was brought in a second time. But unfortunately, to say the least, I was unable to identify the second person involved. I had already told the officers from the get-go that I don't think I would be able to identify him because I had not seen his face properly that night. But you know, it's procedure, so I had to do it, and unfortunately, I chose the wrong person. That was one of the worst days of my life.
But more importantly, not identifying the correct person now leaves that person in the public.
Correct.
To kill you.
Correct. That is the most unfortunate thing because I've probably greeted this man and not know it was him. I've probably sat next to him on a public transport and not know it was him because people tell me that they know who he is. He says things about the incident and he knows my face. He knows my face very well because my face has been all over the news, etc. And he saw me that night as well and I don't know him. I don't know what he looks like, but he's running free and he's all about the place doing his thing. So yeah.
So Jacobie is arrested and charged,
Right.
and the other guy isn't. How many years did he spend on remand before he was granted bail?
4 years.
When you got the news that Jacobie would be walking the streets,
When I got that news, I was shocked. I could not believe it because we were told that he was not going to be granted bail. We did not have to worry about that. So I tried to carry on with my life, try to be as normal as possible throughout the emotional trauma and the pain and the crying every day because I had to tend to my daughter. I had to make money. I'm a single parent.
over the period of 5 years it took for that case to go to trial, were there any attempts on your life or threats?
Yeah, there were quite a few. I probably cannot remember every right now, but I remember a friend of mine sending me a text message. We had a conversation via WhatsApp, and she was telling me, well, a cousin of hers shared a cell with James Jacobie. Close to the time that he was arrested. He was arrested the very same night of the incident. And when that guy was released, he had told the guy to contact somebody in Grass Street to do the job, which is get rid of me. And because of that, I was encouraged not to go to the funeral. I still went. I was escorted. There were officers, and that was one of them. There were quite a few. I got a lot of phone calls and warnings, people telling me that certain members of his family were trying to find out where I work. They look at me in town, they point at me, they say things. They try to find out where I live, etc., who my parents are and my friends are, in an effort to find me. And I try my best not to live my life in fear because, like I said, when you have kids, you have no choice but to move on and move forward, So I try my best, despite all those threats, to do that. And the worst threat of all was 2 weeks after he was granted bail. I remember I got to work that day, and before I entered the supermarket, my cashier came to me and she told me, Eva, I don't think you should continue coming to work. And I asked her why. Now, I had communicated to my staff what was going on with me, with the case, with him being out, so that they could keep an eye open. Because I just knew that he would try to have me killed. I knew he would try. Because I'm the key witness. Without my testimony, he basically goes free. So I knew he would try. And I kept hearing a lot of things about his reputation and things that he had done in the past and gotten away with. So she told me that this funny looking person came in and he was walking around, his hand under his shirt, having fake conversations on his phone. The security guard told me he was following him around, and he took a bunch of groceries, he placed it on the counter by the cashier, and then he just walks out. He does not pay for it, he does not take anything, he just looks around and then he leaves. So I was concerned, but I was like, okay, you know what? I just got an awesome job, making good money. I could finally take care of my daughter the way I always wanted to. So I'm not going to give up my job, But then around 6:30 p.m. that night, my security guard all of a sudden tells me, Eva, go into the office, go. And I'm like, why? He said, the same guy is coming back. So I ducked, but by the time I ducked, he had already opened the door. So I suspect that he saw me duck under the cashier booth. He walked around as usual, the same routine, and he came over, because he had seen me duck, he came over the cashier's booth and he asked for cigarettes because, in most establishments, the cigarettes are located behind the cashier. So she grabbed a cigarette for him and my security is looking at him. And you could see him going over and trying to look, And then he pays for the cigarettes and he walks out. So, of course, I got a panic attack. I freaked out.
You did the best you could for him. You made sure he traveled in style. You provided life's creature comforts and all the toys a boy could dream of. You ensured he didn't have to work hard a day in his life. We know he's not your son. He's your big bank manager's son. Isn't it time you engage with someone who cares about you, your family, and your future? Labrie Cooperative Credit Union. We are not a bank. We are better.
Geologists from the University of the West Indies have confirmed the increase in intensity, frequency, and severity of earthquakes. With the uptick in seismic activity in the Caribbean, global standards now require buildings to be designed to withstand the Earth's volatile shakes. Caribbean Metals Limited, the market leaders of all rebar and steel products, now stock A706 reinforced weldable rebars. Ensure the W is visible to guarantee your project meets new earthquake-resistant standards. Insist your contractor use A706 because normal is no longer acceptable. A706 rebars are only available at Caribbean Metals. Ask for it by name. A706 rebars. Caribbean Metals Limited. We've got you covered. Guaranteed.
Take me back to the trial and the cross-examination. Who were the defense counsels and what was that cross-examination like?
The defense counsels were Mr. Richilo and Lon Theophilus. Those were the two. And they made my life a living hell. I'm laughing, but let me tell you, the cross-examination was literally worse than the actual incident, than the feeling I got afterwards. It was worse than any way. It made me feel worse than any way that I had felt over the past 6 years since Akwaso was taken. They tried to convince me that I had no idea what I was talking about, that I never met Jacobie before in my life. It wasn't him in the car. He was nowhere around. I identified the wrong person. And imagine going through something like that and you know you're telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And then these lawyers, after everything you went through, your whole life changed. You cannot go out in public. You cannot go to a bar to have a drink. You cannot take your daughter out to pizza to run around. You cannot do anything. You cannot work. You cannot earn money. And they're telling you that you're lying. Could you believe that? I could not believe I had to go through 3 days of that. It was crazy. It was crazy. I understand why I understand why witnesses just disappear. They run because nothing is. I'm not trying to discourage people because I do not regret going through this. Akwaso was worth it. He was worth it, hands down. But I understand why people just run instead of testifying because it was crazy. Honestly.
Where were you when you got the verdict and what was that feeling like?
Oh yeah, I was at home and I got a phone call from Akwaso's sister, and she was very soft-spoken, and she told me, Eva, he pleaded guilty to murder. Gosh, the relief, I swear, like, I laughed. I let out a short, hearty laugh because, I mean, while the ultimate gift would be having Akwaso back, but we were going through hell with this trial. Pure hell, adjournments and all of that. So we really wanted to be able to at least move on.
What do you think was the motive for that attack?
Well, we later found out that he was in debt, Jacobie, a lot of debt. And obviously he used the insurance money. I don't know if he used it to deal with his debt or whatever, but even if the change of ownership was not official yet, that document that he put his signature on, that Kwaso had typed up himself, Kwaso would have taken him to court to try to get his money back. And he did not want to give us that money. So that was his motive. He figured, you know what, I'll just kill Mate and I never have to pay that money back. That was it. They didn't plan for me to be there that night. So I guess when they went into that dirt road before we moved out, before they got into the car, they went to discuss what they're going to do with the other one.
If you were to see James Jacobie tomorrow, what would you say to him?
I would tell him, Akwaso was good to you. He was good to you. He didn't try to cross you in any way, shape, or form. What was your motivation? I believe I survived the incident to tell the story and to finally have James Jacobie convicted.
Who'd go on and on, the fool has never been told. Who'd go on and on, the fool has never been told. Who'd go on and on, the fool has never been told. Who'd go on and on, the fool has never been told. Who'd go on and on, the fool has never been